This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
What up?
Yeah.
Hello.
What kind of jersey do you have on there, Andrew?
It's a USA jersey for Devin Booker. I had adventures last weekend because now there's no thoughts going around in my head. So I'm like, I have all this energy. I should do something with it. And I went and walked around downtown Phoenix for a few hours. And I didn't realize how close all the baseball stadiums and the basketball stadium was to me. And I went into the store shop and bought a jersey because I was like, now I'm a bandwagon fan. But then I realized that the Diamondbacks, the MLB team for Phoenix, the stadium is only 5 or 10 minutes away. So I went to 2 baseball games last weekend, saw some fireworks. I had a lot of fun.
Nice.
That rules.
Last baseball game I went to was with Jason.
I know. I thought about y'all when I was there. I was like, I want friends.
All that food, all that drink.
Yep. Milk at a baseball game. Eat.
Oh, that's where it's all coming back to me. There's no way in hell you were going to catch me buying milk at a baseball stadium. And now that I've been back to one, I can safely say I still stand behind that.
That's cool though that you went. Maybe when basketball season rolls around, you'll stay a bandwagon fan and we can talk basketball.
Yeah. I've played basketball my whole life, but I've never been into it because I was never good at it. So I never liked watching it because it just made me angry and frustrated. But the stadium's 10 minutes away. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go.
Love it. Well, cool. Chris, what you up to?
Man, I got to fly my drone this morning for like an hour, watching them crane up the trusses on the house. That was exciting. I guess they're going to go and somehow lug giant sheets of lumber up there and put the sheathing on the top, and then shingles should go up. They said in a day for the entire house. And I'm like, those people are fast. They did all of the trusses on our house, not the garage portion, but they did all that before noon. Brooke was going to come out at 10:45 or something. And I was like, you better hurry up because they're almost done. And I was like, they're flying. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It feels like an actual house now. And boy, is it tall. I think they said it's 55 feet tall because we have like a 10-foot ceiling, 9-foot ceiling upstairs. But we have a basement too. So that's probably measured from the basement to the roof line or whatever. So, but it's kind of crazy. Feels like a house.
Exciting.
Yeah. It won't be done for a very long time, but it'll look like a house. That's good.
Like the TV show House on Fox?
Yeah, exactly.
I really liked that show. That was a great show.
It was a good show. We didn't watch it till a couple of years ago.
I remember watching it when it first came on, but then I rewatched it. Dude, Hugh Laurie does a fantastic job in that. And such a great portrayal of like addiction. Fantastic show.
Yeah, he's a good actor in that show. So what's new with you, Jason?
Nothing much. I've been working on a bit of a side project. I don't know if I even talked about it, but like we're still doing store form, but we're like building a tool first that we can just like a free tool. And it's for like screen printers to like choose products and then put designs on them for like quick mock-ups. And so I've been just kind of in my free time chipping away at that. It's been way different from what I normally do. So that's been fun.
Did you guys mostly JavaScript?
Yeah, so it is mostly JavaScript, but the actual combining of the designs and the product happen right now with ImageMagick, but using RMagick. So like all the resizing, dragging, rotating happens in React. But like when you upload a design, what I'm doing is doing a direct upload to active storage. And then I monkey patched the direct uploads controller to give me the URL back. That way the browser will cache the URL and I don't have to keep reloading the file if you change screens and stuff. But the actual reason I did all of that was so that by the time like you can submit like multiple designs at once. And the idea is that like when you hit submit, I'm not having to upload all those files. Like I already have them uploaded and I can just throw them into ImageMagick, RMagick and do the thing.
That's cool.
This is completely off topic. I'm so sorry. You're going to have to bear with me here. But did you guys see the trailer for Matrix 4?
I didn't. No, I went to watch it and they had the red pill, blue pill thing. And then it was like, see the full trailer tomorrow. And I was like, okay. I'll check
you saw
back in
the
tomorrow, and then I never saw it. So I tried, but I was too early.
The full trailer came out yesterday. I'm excited. Fun fact, that website, the Blue Pill, Red Pill, is made in Tailwind.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, there we check that box. We mentioned Tailwind this episode.
Yeah.
And we've got JavaScript and React. Let's keep going. Yeah.
Speaking of, have you guys watched any of the CSS bundling stuff that's going on?
I've been paying attention loosely.
I made the mistake of subscribing to all of the notifications
no.
for the repo. And because I wanted to keep on top of it, but that's adding up to be a fair bit of email that I just like glance through and delete. But yeah, I'm excited. This is like what Rails probably should have done from the very beginning with Webpacker. Let's leave it up to you, but we'll just build a little runner that runs it and make sure it dumps out stuff in the right place. That's about it, and it's cool because now we have the Tailwind CLI version that he released, which will run the JIT and everything and spit everything out into the builds folder in the asset pipeline, just like the JS bundler stuff does. And then he just merged in the Bootstrap installer thing, which is cool because it can, I don't remember. I think they run it through Sass because I think it uses Bootstrap's built on Sass, but also uses auto prefixer and stuff. But then there's also the post CSS stuff as well that you can use.
Is 5 still built on Sass? I thought
think so. Maybe not.
Okay. I thought they got off of that, but maybe I know they got off of jQuery. I guess maybe I was thinking about that. Okay.
I believe that it's
you
still
have to transpile
Sass.
that.
Yeah, but they do now have like at least you can use Bootstrap as a JavaScript module as well. And so the JavaScript's made a big improvement. And this is one of those ones where it was like, I didn't know what DHH was going to do because the Bootstrap installer is like, yeah, well, here's some CSS, but also you're going to need the JavaScript. And like, that's not just a single drop in for each individual one or whatever. So I thought maybe it would get split up into the two libraries. But yeah, it's like people are figuring out like, I'm going to pass in this folder to say, we want to be able to look up CSS in the node modules fold because that isn't wired up, I guess, out of the box with some of the post CSS or whatever. So it's nice to be able to watch like all this stuff go through and it looks like it's going to be very easy. You don't have to have Node installed on your system if you want to use import maps or some CSS other thing. But if you want to install, your CSS and JS from Node modules, like to be all set, you can just install NPM and make sure it's there, which Heroku and Hatchbox and everybody else generally is going to have anyways. So I think it's going to be a nice balance to it all, which is kind of weird to say because we haven't had a nice balance in Rails for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. CSS was like the missing piece to all this for me. I'm actually kind of on board with let's go back to the asset pipeline and like bundle and push it through. I think it's actually a really cool idea, but I want a really solid Tailwind. Like I want to use all the Tailwind features. And so now that has been answered and we have the JS bundling. I'm like, I am content and actually quite happy with this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to start a branch on Jumpstart Pro and try it all. Like I'll probably just upgrade to Rails 7 in that branch just because I want to know what's going to need to be upgraded in the meantime, before Rails 7 comes out. But he did say in his blog post, Rails 7 is coming out before the end of the year. So that's a good sign. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but looking forward to that because I think this is kind of the big blocker as far as I can tell. Like Rails 7 was turbo, all of the requirements to make that work. Import maps became the way to make that work. And then now it's, well, what about everything else that everybody uses that isn't, simple enough for import maps? Now we have an answer and it looks like it's turned out pretty nice. So I'm just glad that it's like a lot of hands-off stuff. Andrea Famera and I hacked on last weekend the little, like we can set up esbuild and we can have it run the watcher to automatically rebuild. But one of my favorite things about Webpacker was like, if it noticed the dev server is not running, then it'll just trigger compile during your requests. So we spent some time and wrote a little wrapper around the esbuild config, which was like, let's go write a temp file, and the dev server opens a socket so that it can serve stuff up. So the dev server works by checking if it's running. If that port is being used, it assumes the dev server is running and it won't recompile during a request. And so we use that exact same approach. Instead of looking at a socket, we wrote a temp file like your Rails server.pid file. We write the PID for esbuild to a file. And then when Rails reloads the request, we check if that PID file exists. If it does, we just move on. If it doesn't, then we go and trigger the esbuild compile from during the Rails request in a before action or something, just to keep it simple. You could throw that in a rack middleware or something too. Doesn't really matter where it goes as long as it gets run at some point. And that worked really well, except for there was, as far as I can tell, some strange things happened because esbuild listens to the interrupts and like sig term and a sig int, and the exit callbacks weren't really working for me reliably to clean up that PID file. So it needs a little work to make it perfect, but at least it's a cool option for stuff in the future. And we'll probably, I'm guessing we'll try and use esbuild in Jumpstart Pro and try and bake that solution in so I can get it working reliably to clean up the PID. But it is cool to be able to just go add that if you want.
Before there is like JS bundling, there was like esbuild Rails and rollup Rails. And so like Saturday morning, I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can figure out the config file for esbuild. And I hacked it together and like, it wasn't awesome, but like I opened a PR and the next morning I woke up and like DHH was like, yeah, I don't love this approach. And by the time I could respond, the whole repo had been archived, and because they had moved on to JS bundling, and I was like, all right, cool.
He disliked your PR that much. The whole repo just went away.
Whole gym.
Yeah. He's like,
ouch,
screw it.
Well, like the issue that was open, like, so, and I think it still works the same way as like the JS bundling thing, but like there is no watch argument you can pass like the esbuild CLI. And so if you create a config file, it also like you can tell it to do watch mode, but it's like a hard coded true or false in the config file. So what I did was I like read the node arguments for like -- watch. And then I ran a little function that like would print out every time it built. But I think the phrase he used was like, it feels like a mini Webpacker. And I was like, I mean, that's fair.
Kind of.
Yeah.
At that point.
It's just like super useful though, because it runs out of band. So, when we were doing the auto build stuff during a request, it's fast, but it's still a second delay every, reload. It's better than Webpack's like 8 or 9 seconds for me with Tailwind. But like, if it can combine that with a parallel thing that's running, and I can use it the same way, it's nice. That is quite an improvement to the community, though. I think it's going to be, it's just nice to see like, let's let you do whatever the heck you want. We're not going to try and control it like we did with Webpacker and have a config that's in YAML and then all this other stuff. It's just run whatever command you want to build your JavaScript, whatever command you want to run to build your CSS, put it in this folder. I don't care. We'll run it and we'll call it a day. And I'm happy with that solution. That seems like it's going to do exactly what I wanted.
I didn't even realize how much I wanted that approach until it existed. Because when I started getting more into JavaScript, like it was Webpacker. And it was like, I don't understand Webpack. So I'm scared. Like I'm just by default scared of any JavaScript like bundling. And so then it was like, this came along. It's like esbuild's actually stupid simple to use. And it was like, okay, I'm good with this because we can still use Webpack if we want without Webpacker. So,
yep. And, if you do want code splitting or whatever that esbuild like either hasn't built yet or is intentionally not going to add, you've got rollup. You can run Webpack. You can use whatever now, which is sweet. Really, the only dependencies on JS bundling and CSS bundling is what command are you going to run? And you need to install that yourself. however it goes. You can install Dart Sass, and you don't have to use the JavaScript node module for Sass. You can use the actual like Dart Sass executable on your system, which is sweet. That's going to be nice if you do want to use Sass. You can run it super fast. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's just, hey, we're going to run a yarn build command. Fill it out however the heck you want. Do anything. And I can get behind that because now it is back to being fully in your control to set up however the heck you want, which is nice. It did look like there was going to be a little bit of interesting things, maybe with Webpack or something. There was just a issue open about like, if your build tool adds a hash to the URL, then Sprockets is like going to also add a hash to the URL or whatever. So you might get double or they conflict or something. So it sounds like there's somebody working on that. And, it's not as simple with the CSS, I don't think. The JavaScript seemed like, boom, you're done. But the CSS seems like it has a little bit more complexity to it. Bootstrap having the JavaScript aspect of things and whatever, but it's close. It's like almost ready.
Well, I also saw that Olivier Lacan was talking on Twitter that the module federation doesn't work in Webpacker because of a change that was made, I think, around the same thing you're talking about. So yeah, I guess we'll see.
Node modules flag was like not in there by default. So like things just randomly didn't work quite right. And so I think those little things are the little warts that maybe were already pre-set up for you with a Webpacker setup or whatever. But anyways, go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say, I kind of hope that after Rails 7 launches, like we can go back to being a Ruby podcast. I think we'll be done talking about assets for like at least 2 episodes. So,
are you sure we're not going to end up going back to being a Laravel podcast?
No,
that's
no,
true.
I'll steer the ship. No, hold on. And in that vein, you guys want to talk about some Rubies? I got a thing.
Let's go.
Let's hear
So
it.
you guys know RubyConf is coming up, especially by the time
Hold
this
on.
episode airs.
Hold on. Let's talk about that real quick because they haven't opened registration yet.
Well, dude, I heard
Really?
that they were going to do it today, but it's not open yet.
Because I'm getting nervous that it's not going to.
No. I heard it was going to happen. I think it's going to happen pretty soon. Like I
Okay.
would expect it within the next few days, I think.
Okay, continue.
But I could be completely wrong and it could all go to poop.
There's our tame Andrew.
No, I'm not. I'm just, I cursed so much last week that I was like, I don't want to put Paul through that again. No, I'm not calm. I'm not calm at all, but it's fine. Yeah, I think it'll happen. I'm still hopeful. I think things are getting better, although I think it really kind of comes down to getting vaccinated. So here's a political statement. Get vaccinated, you people. God, Jesus, it's not that hard. Anyway, so I think things are going to get better. I think it's going to happen. Like they said there's going to be a mask mandate, whatever, not ideal, but if that's what it takes to be able to have it, so be it. I'm going for sure. And I already booked to stay. So like Colin's coming with me or we're going. So I'll be there for sure. Chris, I don't think you're going, right?
No, I don't think so. Unfortunately, between all the house stuff and everything else going on, I just can't make it. But I will make sure I make it to RailsConf next year.
And Jason, I heard there was hope.
Yeah, it's my plan to go. The only thing that would stop me is some pretty gnarly COVID numbers. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, same. Yeah. If things are out of control in Colorado, then yeah, that's definitely one thing. I mean, I just went to 2 public baseball games and Arizona is very much, no, we're not doing it. We're not there. They have a lot of weird things happening here, but I felt fine. I'll tell you this. The only time I got scared is there was like a teenager at one of the games I went to sat beside me and I was like, are schools open? I was like, oh my God. And then I heard him cough and I was like, okay, all right, we're moving away from this child. Like the only person I was ever worried that might get me sick was the kid because I was like, schools are open. This is not cool. Get away from me. Anyway, I want to talk about this concept because conferences are going to start happening again, right? I went to a meetup the other day and while I was at that meetup, it was by Mike Rogers. He was talking about seeding your Rails applications. I learned some cool stuff. Shout out, Mike. It was a great talk. But when we were in that meetup, I thought back about this old Bike Shed episode where they talk about the nodder. And as conference season approaches, I want to spread this concept with other people because I think it's helpful. They were basically, and I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't find the episode, that when they're giving talks or meetups or whatever, there are some people that listen very visually, like they nod their head and they are animated as the person talks. And I'm not like that at all, naturally. Very stone cold, stoic. Yeah, See, now Chris and Jason are nodding enthusiastically for the listeners. But you guys aren't like that either, right? So we kind of just listen where we just kind of sit there and listen. But some people are like, they nod along and stuff. But they were saying that when you're giving a talk, it's so helpful to have one of those people because you can find one of those people and kind of look at them and be like, okay, this person's listening and they're giving me feedback as to how I'm doing. So I can know, oh no, they understand or like I'm making sense. And when Mike was giving his meetup, as soon as he started talking, which I totally understand, everyone kind of shut off their cameras, which I get because on one hand, if I'm like goofing around kicking a soccer ball up and down, I don't want Mike to see me like not paying attention. That's kind of rude, right? But at the same time, all of a sudden he had no visual feedback. He had no feedback at all because they're like the people who had their cameras on weren't really giving any animated face. So I turned my camera on and I was his nodder. So as conferences start to pick up more, I would encourage you to like be that nodder that listens along visually because it does help when you're speaking to see that feedback. So just a thing, just a PSA.
And not nodding off and falling asleep during the talk, right?
Right. Well, it's hard, right? And I think there's a lot of new speakers coming to RubyConf, if I'm not mistaken. I could be totally mistaken, but just it's helpful, right? To get that thing. I don't know. He said he messaged me afterwards and was like, dude, I saw you out there nodding and thank you. And I was like, okay, I got to tell people about this.
This was an online meetup, right?
Yes.
Like in Zoom or something?
Yes.
Yeah, because in that, sometimes your mic will stop working or whatever. You
have no idea.
You need that feedback, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's extra critical in a online one. And I'm going to be doing a talk for Sardines.rb in 6 days, I think. We'll put the link. I guess it will have happened before this episode comes out. But yeah, I'll put the link in. So I'm sure we'll record it and people can watch, but it's kind of going to be about similar stuff that I did at RailsConf, talking about Hotwire. Yeah, that one will be a online one. I think kind of in the middle of the day for us because they're in Europe. So, but yeah, I can totally agree with that advice. That is an important one. Even when we're doing the podcast, like it's useful to know that you're not talking and people are just like bored with whatever you're talking about. So I like it.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to give talks, you guys, in the near future?
I forgot to submit. Like I could give one and I was supposed to give one and then I canceled because I just wasn't in the mood for it. Because Jason, I hope you can cinemize with this. I don't like to plan things far out because I don't know how I'll feel on that day. Like I may wake up that day and just not be in it.
Yeah, I get that. I did not submit to RubyConf. Once COVID hit, and a little before that, I was kind of like, I'm going to take a little break. I can't do the online conferences very well. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe RailsConf, I might try and submit something, but I don't know. I don't know if I have anything valuable to share right now anyway.
I think I might submit to RailsConf. Maybe I'll try to get a stimulus reflex talk in there. I thought about submitting to RubyConf, like a talk about Bridgetown, just because that's something cool in Ruby. I had ideas, but I didn't submit. This is the first time I haven't submitted for it.
Yeah, Bridgetown would be a good one, I think.
I mean, there's a lot happening in Ruby right now. I feel like there's a lot of great talk ideas that you could get. And I'm sure like if I could like iron them out, but we'll see. Maybe next time. I always submit for RailsConf, so I'm sure I will. And I'll definitely be at RailsConf. So we'll see.
Cool. Let's take a second to thank our sponsor, Honeybadger. Recording errors in production apps is a lot more than recording just the error itself. You need the context that goes along with it. That's why Honeybadger includes everything you need to know with each error. So Honeybadger records, of course, the error, the backtrace, the cookies, the session, and all that information, but they also include a bunch of other really useful things like which user saw the error and how many times they have seen it. So if you have a user trying the same thing over 15 times, hey, you should probably reach out to that customer and let them know, hey, we're working on it and we're going to have this fixed very shortly. The other thing that's really cool about Honeybadger is the breadcrumbs. They automatically record client-side and server-side breadcrumbs for you, so you can see all of the steps that a user took before the error occurred. This is really, really useful, especially in integrations where you have maybe the user doing something on the client side that triggers some JavaScript that goes and asks for something from the server, and then that response comes back and then it triggers a JavaScript error. you have several things going on there, and you can see all of those steps that were taken with the breadcrumbs and honey badger. It helps you reproduce it. You can also see the entire process that the user took, which you may not be able to guess sometimes. Users can do some strange things, and it's really nice to be able to see those breadcrumbs in honey badger. Plus, they support everything from Ruby to JavaScript, PHP, Elixir, Go, and even Crystal. So that means no matter what you're running, whether it's client side or server side, you can keep track of all of that in one place. Check them out at honeybadger.io and let them know that you heard about them on Remote Ruby. Speaking of new Ruby stuff, have you guys tried the new debugger? The debug gem?
I started to because I was like, how do I make this a VS Code thing? How do I do this? So I started looking into it, but I kind of fell off because I haven't really done any coding outside of work for the past 2-3 weeks because of the situation discussed last week.
Yeah.
You mess with it, Chris?
No, I didn't. But I did see that has already taken the primary place in Rails 7, I think, as one of the default gems. Maybe?
Yeah, they took out my bug. No, you're right.
Okay, cool.
I feel like that would be like a great GoRails episode on debugger.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily. I mean, but now that it's in Rails, you could definitely test it in Rails, but like just how to use it. Cause that's such like a low hanging fruit. I feel like you don't have to do like this insane amount of work to set up or explain these outside dependencies or anything. I feel like that would be a great episode.
Yeah. I've done a few in the past of kind of like the thought process to go through and like you see an error page. Because I think, well, lately I've noticed for whatever reason, and it comes and goes, but like people have a tendency to just be like, hey, this broke, and they paste you the error by itself. And I'm like,
yeah,
literally the thing that I never really care about is the error itself. I'm like, what was the line of code and what was it doing? And I don't care about your line of code as much. I need to know that probably, but like when it finally crashed, what was that? And then what was your line of code? And then the error. And then it gives me like a lot more context. But yeah, like along those lines there needs to be some sort of thing that we can get people to like, here's what you care about. When you see an error, grab these 3 things and like share that every single time. But do not ever forget these as long as they're available. And sometimes you're in IRB and it's, you get your lines of code, but not the full stack trace. And that's annoying, but then also like you have to teach them like write a begin, write your line of code that crashes, rescue from it, and then call like error.backtrace and you can get the whole thing. And if it's getting scraped somehow or filtered, you can still get to the full backtrace. You might just have to do a little bit of work. But for someone now maintaining the pay version 3 upgrade was like changed so much crap that I'm like, hey, if you ran into something, I need to know all this context now so that it's just complex enough. I'm going to have to know those things. So,
well, you could fix that with a GitHub issue template, right? No, to a degree, you can fix it.
Right. Maybe it's a GitHub issue template plus like a micro screencast of like, hey, if you're here in the Rails error page, click on full trace and send me that, not the application trace. And if you're in the console, then use a begin rescue so you can grab the full trace or whatever. That would probably be really useful. Be nice to have something thorough for all of that. I definitely need to do the template regardless, but some nice education on that would be good too.
I had a special template for if you had a reproduction, if you could reproduce the error with a little side app. And I specifically put, if you have a reproduction, you will be high priority and you are way more likely to get a response. And I was like, if you don't have a reproduction, no guarantee.
Yeah. The amount of time saved from you trying to fiddle around and recreate whatever weird data they had or whatever weird commands they're running. Yeah. If they didn't put in the effort to give you at least something, then it probably doesn't quite warrant much attention at all. So yeah, that's an art in and of itself. It seems like helping people find ways to communicate what's going on because you can't be there in their system.
Communication is like such a massive part of what we do, which I mean, I was sold a false dream, honestly. I thought I was going to be able to sit in a dark closet and code in the middle of the night. And that's not true. It was a sad day when I figured that out.
You probably just won't get paid for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a hard thing. But yeah, it is. it's also difficult because you're dealing with such a wide variety of skills and you have no idea if someone just comes in, you have no idea usually where they're at. So like it used to really bother me when someone would send me an issue and the answer was in the error message that they pasted. Like that would really bother me. But then I would realize, you have no idea what you're dealing with. So like a little patience and empathy. But at the same time, if they're not going to respect my time and try to recreate it, and they're not going to put in the work to like write, like give me the information I need, then like I don't really feel the need to spend my time on you.
Yeah, that's a good point about the error messages, because boy, those can be written so tersely sometimes that like even someone experienced can read them and be like, what the heck does that mean? And other times it's like related to some feature you didn't even know you were using, maybe. Like sometimes I know I've seen like someone adds a type field to their model and it's Rails is like running STI on the model and like you get an error from that and you're like, I didn't even know I couldn't use the type column, and those can be crazy to just, interpret that error sometimes when you're like, what the heck even is this? Yeah, it is definitely, I think, one of those things that really sets apart a good developer from a junior or whatever is like your ability to go read through the context and like pinpoint what is actually the stuff that matters here. Cause that seems to be the thing that keeps the senior developers fast at what they do. You get dumped a whole ton of crap when an error happens and you can pinpoint like these 2 lines are the only ones that matter here. And now I have context to go solve that really quickly versus I don't know what this means. I'm going to copy this line and Google it. And that's really generic. And so Google doesn't give you anything useful. And it seems like a quick thing that I can use now to kind of gauge someone's experience level, I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, on the subject of debuggers, are you a Pry user? You use Pry?
No, I used to a little bit, but then Binding IRB came out and I just use that now. And so I like use Pry and then Bybug became the default or whatever. So I used Bybug a lot. And then it was like, why even use Bybug if Binding IRB is built in now? So that's pretty much all I've been using. And
when was Binding IRB added?
I don't remember. Ruby 2.5 or something, maybe. I can look it up.
So it's not that old. I was like, I've never known Binding.IRB not to be a thing, but I didn't learn about it until not long ago. I don't think I've ever in my life used Bybug, ever. It's always like one of the first gems that I take out of a Rails app because I'm a hardcore Pry user. And
this issue on Ruby Bug Tracker said that it's Ruby 2.4 added Binding IRB. See, I started, or at least I worked on several apps that were like Ruby 1.8.7 and definitely 1.9.3. And so there's been a lot of changes since then to the point where it's kind of like the new iPhone. You're like, there's some new features, but I don't even care because I'm probably not going to use them, or I'm already so used to whatever old patterns. So yeah, it's kind of funny that, so many of those things change. Because I remember the big issue that the Ruby 2 upgrade was like, there's all this new syntax for hashes. If you write in that new syntax, it's way cleaner for symbol keys. But guess what? It's not going to work on any old Ruby. So nobody used it because they wanted the gems to still be compatible with 1.9.3 or whatever. And it took a long time for a lot of the gems to switch over just to that syntax. And there's stuff, I think I was working on Access Tenant a little while ago and realized like all the hashes are still using the old syntax or, whatever gem it was. At this point, I'm like, look, it's safe enough to go just remove all that, clean up the syntax and make it all the modern stuff because there's no sense in supporting some of that. Plus, I don't want to go back and, the maintenance of some of those like weird exceptions or even Rails versions. Pay now is 6 and higher because like there's one little important, very convenient thing that was not in 5.2 that 6 added. And I was like, you know what, screw it. Like 7's coming out. 5.2 is going to be not being maintained anymore. I guess I'll just abandon that and use the new feature out of the box. And yeah, it's hard to balance that, like you don't want to do too much, but you don't want to do too little and get stuck in the past there.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Siri is joining us as our guest this week.
It feels like if you're working on a gym is that big, that hash syntax incompatibility is not going to be the biggest incompatibility.
Right, right. Yeah, and some of this is, access tenant is, I don't know how old, right? Like it probably was around back in the day with those versions, and that was a concern then. And if it doesn't hurt anything, like you just leave it and it just stays around and whatever. But Airbit, the like open source error tracker, it's stuck in Rails 4.2. They can't get past Ruby 2.6 unless they upgrade the Rails version. And there's all these dependencies that are now kind of stuck on older versions. And before you know it, it all piles up pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't upgrade.
I got side anxiety when you were talking because like I've been in that situation and I was like, oh no, if they're letting that happen, then this other thing's also happening that they probably don't even know about yet. And I'm like, oh God, it's the worst. Because yeah, it's only going to get worse. Okay, along with pay, you made me think of something. Is there anything with Stripe invoices that pay can do, or is that like completely outside?
Yeah, we can create invoices. I think it's just like a helper method for wrapping the invoice endpoint for the most part. But then, like we already have webhooks to save the invoices and everything's already kind of set up there. So, you issue a charge and voila, it shows up in your database. The one thing that we don't really have yet that I want to do is subscriptions and invoices both have sub models, subscription items and invoice items. And they can be like, you have an invoice for your GoRails subscription and we charge you the subscription, but you have a quantity of 9 people on your team. So we multiply by 9 and whatever. And then we add on some extra like one-time fee into the invoice. The multiple entries in the invoice we don't have saved to the database yet. I want to do that because right now, like you can create a charge, which is separate from an invoice because it's just a straight up charge and you track the invoice entries yourself. But if you want to use their invoice functionality, you can. And we just don't really keep track of that invoice data.
Right.
It's just the charge gets saved in the invoice ID. You can look up and grab the invoice through their API. It's just not synced to the database yet. So yeah.
I was reading your documentation, which is pretty good. I'll just say. I was like, yeah.
I had to spend a lot of time rewriting all that stuff.
It shows.
Yeah, it's been good to get through all that, but there's lots of little things. Like somebody just the other day was like, hey, the install doc still says install pay version 2. And I was like, well, that needs to change. Thanks.
Yeah. I was looking at your webhook documentation specifically and I was thinking about it and I was like, but what happens and I'm not worried about my app going down and I'm not worried about Stripe going down, but what happens if it happens, right? If we're receiving webhooks and we want to get notified of these things so we can create these records, like what happens if my app goes down and we're only relying on webhooks? Now you could use something like Hook Relay from the Honey Badger folks, I think, to like really handle something like this correctly. But like in my chimp brain, I was like, does that mean I also need polling? If there's no option for this to not be syncing, what else could I even do?
So this is one of the big changes I did in version 3, which was, and this is relevant not if your app goes down by itself, but like it's Black Friday and you're slammed with webhooks, right? So you could get DDoSed by Stripe by having too many webhooks coming through or whatever, right?
I never even thought about that.
It's like probably not going to happen, but I'm sure they kind of like, have some amount of limits there for you, but it's whatever. So the way that I set it up in version 3 was that we now do the minimum processing when a webhook comes in. It used to be that we do the whole thing, and that was fine, except for if we did that as they come in, you can create a new subscription, which will create a subscription. It will create an invoice. It will pay the invoice. If that succeeds, it will send you a charge succeeded webhook as well as all of those. And then your subscription gets updated as well. So you get like 7 webhooks or something for creating a subscription. And
nice.
The problem is that they're just shoving these on background queues, right? So they're like, they've got workers that are like grabbing these and sending them over to you. But some of them will happen before others. So it's rare, but it happens. But a subscription updated can come in before a subscription created came in. So all of the webhooks now are as simple, and Stripe's talked about maybe changing this. It's going to be a massive breaking change for everybody. But what they might do is give you the ID of the object, like the subscription, and just force you, instead of giving you the attributes in the webhook, force you to go look it up. So then your subscription updated will grab the latest data. The subscription created can come in later and still grab the latest data, and you can, update it and be accurate that way. So I rewrote all the webhooks we just grab the ID of whatever came in, payment method, customer, charge, subscription, whatever it is, and we go look it up from the API and then do that. That makes it a little bit slower though. So now the way that it works is we receive the webhook, we verify the signature on it so it's not spoofed from somebody abusing your service, and we guarantee it's from Stripe or Braintree or Paddle. And then we write it to the database and take the event, save it to the database, and queue a job up to process it. So that job will then make the API request to grab the latest data. So it's more complex now and requires, you to be running your background jobs. But the only thing you're doing now is verifying the webhook was secure, that the signature was correct. And then we can just shove them into the database. Plus, you get the benefit of they can be retried. Stripe is going to, if your site's down and you give them anything other than a 200, they'll retry it up to 10 times with the exponential back off, or 5 times, whatever that is. And this is kind of like what Hook Relay would do for you, is keep those, then try and send them to your app and wait a week if you needed to or whatever. And so we're kind of a miniature version of that is probably good enough for the gem, and it works well. So
yeah, because I guess the way I would solve that by hand is everything would go straight into a background, into Sidekick. Everything goes into Sidekick. Yeah. And if it can't find, if we got the update first, we would just keep retrying with the exponential back off until the created one came in and was added. And then as soon as that one existed, somehow, probably with UUIDs or something, I would then allow that update to come in. You
don't need to wait for the created to come in before you run the updated, because they're probably going to do the same thing and sync it to the database. Right. So I just have them run the exact same thing. I have a customer sync, subscription sync, charge sync, and a payment method sync. And they all just do the same thing. They're all just, hey, go sync this. So if we've already got it in the database, we'll update the values. If we don't have it, we'll create it. And then, with database uniqueness and if we're updating, we can lock the row as well, just so that one does it at a time or whatever. It works well. So, it's maybe not perfect, and probably I'm sure I've missed something or whatever, because the race conditions can be tricky to get right. So if anybody catches those, PRs are very welcome. But
PRs accepted.
So it's a very interesting thing, because you need to do also the same thing outgoing, where you generate a webhook to send out, but you got to try it 5 times or more with exponential back off, collect that bad request response, and okay, we'll queue up a job for 5 minutes from now and try it again. And then the other thing too is related to this, I upgraded my very old Stripe code from GoRails, from using their sources and all this pre-SCA stuff, to Stripe checkout. And let me tell you, that is amazing, because I had all this code that was JavaScript for setting your token for your payment method and then creating a subscription and all this stuff. And it literally is now create a checkout session and redirect on the back end to that. And then the redirect back can include the checkout session ID, so you can look it up from the API when they get sent back from Stripe. But they also send the webhooks. So GoRails will just give you a subscription via the webhook, and you're subscribed. And I have 1 or 2 little things in the background for webhook processing, and all of my Stripe payments for GoRails will always be up to date. And I'm this is what I want. It's not running Jumpstart, so I can't do a custom integration yet. Maybe one day it'll be on Jumpstart, but checkout is dope.
Yeah. It seems you know a lot about Stripe.
Well, I am a Stripe community expert now. So
Oh, clap.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And they sponsor Pays development, which is cool.
Oh,
So,
that's very cool.
yeah, they're my biggest GitHub sponsor. And shout out to all the GitHub sponsors. Everybody that does that is amazing.
Yes.
What were you going to say, Jason?
I was just going to talk about checkout. I put it in a side project one time, and like similar to you, like all of a sudden I just had 3 webhooks that I listened to, like checkout completed, subscription updated, subscription canceled.
So I haven't done this yet, but did you realize that if you build something with Stripe Checkout, and so for example, I need to do this for GoRails, that apparently you can create, so I have like my $19 a month USD plan, but all I have to do is create a Euro plan and then send them to checkout with the correct Euros plan. And all of the payment method options are now magically updated, from cards to Ideal and EPS and FPX and all these other options that like I don't even have to care about. Like, this is so
It's like,
awesome.
what are these words?
Yeah. And you get like, I mean, even in the US, you get Apple Pay support out of the box. You don't have to think about
Apple
adding
Pay
it
is
to-
big. I pay everything Apple Pay, and I have an Apple Card. Dude, if you have Apple Pay on your website, the likelihood of me checking out on your website has instantly increased.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the ruling from the Apple
Yeah.
and what was it, Epic Games lawsuit?
Epic Games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortnite. We're going to talk about Fortnite. Are we a Fortnite podcast?
Yeah, that's big news though, because one of the things that we built with Jumpstart Pro iOS, with the intentions of like, yeah, we want to have payments in here, but like we'd have to go through all native stuff, and then that's like quite a bit of extra work, and so we never quite built that yet. But now I think we'll just be fine to be able to offer the regular subscriptions and stuff for your product. If I wanted to take GoRails and make an iOS app out of it, I want to not have to do all this Apple Pay integration. And maybe you still have to do that somewhat, but it can at least allow the other ways of paying, which is nice. So
Maybe I'm confused about the actual ruling because it doesn't quite match up with what you said, but I might be wrong.
Their thing is like in-app payments were required, right? Like you could never pay.
But I thought this was only a court in Germany made that call. I thought that the court here in the United States was still going.
There's a bunch of tweets about it today, so I thought,
if this happened today, then I wouldn't know about it.
yeah.
There was a ruling today. Like it has today's date on the stuff. So.
Okay. Well, then
Right.
there was something that happened yesterday, the day before. I thought that's what you were talking about. Some court in Germany or one of the European Union countries made like a ruling about the way Apple was doing something.
Yeah.
And they're
And
like,
I think
"You can't do that."
Korea or something was
Yeah.
another one.
I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like it's being toppled by most countries now, which is, or like it will probably be accepted by most countries. That is not something they're allowed to enforce anymore, which would be really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, because I think that holds back a lot of people from launching their business on an iOS app or whatever, because I'd love to do that, but I'm not going to make
It's
that
expensive.
big of an, I don't want to do that big of an investment from a development perspective to go and launch GoRails iOS. It's
Yeah.
probably going to be, my screen size is probably way too small anyways for watching videos on mobile, but on your phone at least. But
I watch your videos on my phone. It's
just
usually
zoom
fine.
in.
Well, I use an app called RDM to like automatically resize my whole computer screen, which has been working out for me really well.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I told someone the other day, I was like, hey man, like your YouTube videos are great, but I can't see anything on my phone. And I only watch YouTube on my phone and my iPad.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I showed him the app. He's like, I'll try it. So that's what's worked for me.
Interesting. You said it's RDM?
RDM, it's on GitHub.
Easily set Mac Retina display.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Drop
super
that
handy.
link for the people.
Yes. Well, it'll be in the notes. What else is new with you guys? Anything exciting?
I'm excited to see Jason. Potentially.
We need to do an equivalent of the Laravel Laracation. Have you guys seen those tweets?
Nah, I don't like Laravel like y'all do. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Apparently they're all on vacation together. And so one person will be taking a picture of, some monument or whatever, and then another person takes a picture of them taking the picture. There's all these tweet chains of photos of people taking photos. It's pretty fun to watch.
When are we going to have our remote Ruby photo op?
Yeah, we'll be signing autographs at RailsConf.
Oh, dude, please don't. If someone asked for my autograph, I think I would just quit. I would just be done. That would be it for me. I'd be like, nah, this has become something else. No, please don't ask for my autograph. I think number one, I would turn as red as the lights in my room right now. My lights are all red. I would turn sheet red and just die of embarrassment right there.
So I guess Jason and I have to do this, especially when you're up on stage.
Please, no.
You're like giving a talk and we run up there in the middle of the aisle. Can I get your autograph?
Is that Andrew Mason, the Ruby podcaster? To be fair, today I was actually talking about pay with someone and I was like, yeah, I know the guy who wrote pay, my friend, Chris Oliver, the guy that does GoRails. Just casually name dropping.
That's funny. Well, the first time I really went to like a conference and people knew who I was Southeast Ruby and like semi-famous. And then RailsConf. Every time I sat down at a table for lunch or something, someone was like, we heard your voice in the office last week. And I'm like, I don't know if this is cool or creepy or what.
Well, here's something funny for you. When I saw you at lunch at RailsConf and I was like, I would love to go sit down next to Chris Oliver, but I was too scared. That was 2 years ago before I was on the podcast. Yeah. I'm like, I remember that very distinctly. Oh my God, there he is.
That was funny. Yeah. And I was dangling the GoRails stickers as a meet me thing.
I have your sticker right over there. Actually, I just pulled out all my stickers.
Nice.
I'm going to find someone on Pinterest to make me like a collage.
Cool. Well, I guess that's about it, huh?
So long, partner.